How often do you walk out of a team meeting feeling like you just completely lost an hour of your life? If you're thinking, often, you are definitely not alone. And look, this isn't just some minor annoyance. It's a massive drag on execution. What happens is, in most companies, meetings just turn into these, rambling, verbal-only chats. Brilliant ideas, they get lost. Action items, dropped. And accountability, it just kind of evaporates. Honestly, it's a huge strategic liability.
So let's actually put a name to this whole problem. We'll call it the meeting trap. And it really is a vicious cycle. Breaking out of it, that's going to take a deliberate system, not just, hoping for the best.
And really, this boils down to a fundamental choice every leader has to make. You've got the least preferred state over on one side, that's your chaotic, talk-only meetings. And then on the other side, you've got the most preferred state. We're talking focused, disciplined, problem-solving sessions. That massive gap you see between them? Yeah, that's pretty much where strategy goes to die.
And that's the trap right there. Your meeting stops being a place to tackle tough roadblocks and just becomes a reporting session, where everyone goes around the room and just says what they did last week. It's such a complete waste of the incredible brainpower you've got sitting in that room.
Okay, so how do we actually escape this trap? Well, the solution is a beautifully simple but incredibly powerful framework called the Flash Report. Now, let's be super clear about this. This is not just another piece of paperwork to fill out. The Flash Report is a management system. And by forcing everyone to reflect and commit their thoughts to writing before the meeting ever starts, it completely rewires the whole dynamic of the conversation.
So, let's look at the anatomy of this thing. It's brilliantly simple. First, you've got a header and a temp check. Green, yellow, red, for an instant read on how things are feeling. Then, accomplishments, which is great for building momentum. But the real gold, the magic, is in the key issues and roadblocks section. This is what forces those hidden problems out into the open. And when you pair that with tracking last week's and this week's next steps, you've suddenly got this perfect closed-loop system for accountability.
And the beauty of this whole system is just how efficient it is. We're not talking about some huge burden here. It's like a 10-minute exercise in clarity. And what it does is it gives everyone, not just the loudest person in the room, a really structured way to communicate what's really going on.
Okay, so the theory sounds great, right? But we all know implementation is everything. So how do you actually roll this out successfully and make sure you avoid the common pitfalls?
All right, listen up, because for this to work, there are 4 rules that are absolutely non-negotiable. First, it has to be mandatory. For everyone, every single week. Second, all the reports have to be shared before the meeting so people can actually come prepared. Third, you have to structure the meeting around the reports. And fourth, and this is the pro-level move, you start tracking issue resolution time. Seriously, that one number is the single best indicator you'll have of your team's problem-solving speed. Let me tell you a quick story that shows just how powerful this can be. There was this key project, right? It was falling behind schedule, and the weekly meetings were just going in circles. You know the type. Lots of talk, no real progress. So the manager decides to implement the Flash Report. And in the very first week, a quiet junior analyst writes something in his Key Issues section. It says, "I have been unable to get the financial data. My entire analysis is blocked." Nobody knew this was happening. He'd been hesitant to speak up and interrupt a big meeting, right? But the written format, it gave him the psychological safety he needed to raise this critical red flag without feeling put on the spot. And because it was written down and shared with the whole team, that roadblock could not be ignored. The manager saw it, escalated it immediately, and bam, the data was released. The project was back on track in 24 hours. That is the power of forcing issues out of the shadows and into the light. But I have to give you a word of caution here. This system is not foolproof. It can go wrong. If you, as the leader, don't actually act on these reports, they just become more bureaucracy. It's your job to create a culture where someone reporting bad news is thanked for it. They're seen as a contributor, not a complainer.
Which really brings us to the most important question for you. If your team is now doing all this work of reporting their progress and their problems in writing, what's your primary role as a leader in this new system? Okay, this right here is the single most important shift you need to make as a leader. Your job in the meeting is no longer to hear updates, it's to act on them. You become a dedicated roadblock remover. Your entire focus is scanning that key issues section with one goal and one goal only: figuring out where you can help. That becomes your highest value activity, period.
So let's make this super real, super actionable.
Here is your Monday morning action. One simple step you can take to put this into practice, literally, immediately. Look, don't overthink this. Don't try to make it perfect. This Monday, just share the flash report concept with your team. Tell them the very first one is due by the end of the day on Friday. Just start the cycle. I promise you are going to be amazed at the new level of clarity and focus it brings to your very next meeting.